And welcome back to the 2020 podcast, where hindsight is 2020 and the takes are 10 out of 10. If you are a returning viewer slash listener, we do appreciate you guys. And yes, you are getting back-to-back episodes 2 weeks in a row.
Yay!
It's like a goddamn miracle. That was actually a New Year's resolution. We're like, yeah, we got to do back-to-back episodes. That's the bare minimum of what we have to do. So we're already clearing that bar right there. If you are a brand new listener, you don't have no idea who we are, and you're checking us out for the very first time, we appreciate that. For the 2020 podcast, we cover the NBA and the NFL, and we are in the midst of playoff season. The NBA is kicking up. All-star voting just kicked off, and they just announced who's going to be leading the All-Star votes. I just saw that come up on my phone just a couple minutes ago, recording this on Thursday, January 9th. But more importantly, once again, NFL playoff season is here, so it's getting down to the nitty-gritty. We're going to be doing wild card predictions today, talking about starting to fix some of these franchises, starting off with the Tennessee Titans, number one pick in the draft. Obviously, you gotta start with the worst record. But we also have our normal stuff: offensive player of the week, defensive player of the week, rookie performances. Not just the top 10 power rankings this week, but a full top 32, a little bit different. But before we get into any of that stuff, as usual, Drew, how are we doing today?
We're good. It's a beautiful Thursday. It's a beautiful Thursday. It's 19 degrees outside, which is crazy because if I took you outside, it's sunny and it's delicious. And the weird thing about Utah is there's no water in the atmosphere,
Hmm.
so it's very dry. But when there's no water, it's actually not as cold as you think it would be. So you can
Right.
actually go out there and go for a walk in the 19 or 20, 22-degree weather, and it's fine. And I do believe it's a lot colder in Washington right now. So good luck with that.
Yeah, well, it'll be okay. So let's go ahead and get into what we always get into first thing. And let's go ahead and get into our heat check, where we check in with the hottest players around the league for our final regular season games. That's going to be week 18. That's going to be offensive players, defensive players, and a special spotlight on our rookies. Um, it's going to be the last time we were able to highlight some of these guys, because some of these guys didn't get into the playoffs, or maybe they did get into the playoffs, but maybe they're not starters.
Breaking news for the podcast.
Okay, what we got?
Yes. It's not that exciting, but the Raiders just fired their GM.
Oh,
Tom Telesco
yeah.
has has been let go. Uh, Ian Rappaport live. Um, that's crazy. How do you fire your coach 3 days ago? 2 days ago, Mark Davis still hasn't even come out and said anything, and now the GM's gone. Also, like I don't. What are we doing? What you know? A cynic would tell you that they fired their head coach and planned to keep their GM. And then a minority owner, a man named Tom Brady, called up some guy named Bill Belichick and said, "Hey, man, ditch North Carolina and come to the Raiders." And Bill Belichick said, "That's fine, but I'm bringing my own GM." So you heard it here first.
All right. Let's go ahead and get into our heat check. Let's go ahead and start off with the offensive player side of the ball. Um, Drew, I'm going to do mine a little bit different this week. I'm not sure how you're going to do yours, but I'm going to try to highlight people that we usually don't have the opportunity to highlight, that also still had a good game, great games. But I'm going to take the opportunity to highlight people that we might not be able to highlight inside the playoffs at all for one reason or another. Um, Guys who we just really haven't talked about all season. So I'm going to take that opportunity, especially with the rookies too. That's how I'm going to approach this entire thing going forward. Um, with the offensive side of the ball this week, I went forward and I gave my offensive player of the week out to Damian Pierce, 19 carries, 176 yards, and a touchdown. Great performance for a guy that's going to be looking to go to a new team in the offseason. That's going to be his hope. He's basically auditioning to go somewhere else. Joe Mixon is over there in Houston right now. He's the starter. We're not going to really get an opportunity to cover Damian Pierce through the playoffs, more likely than not, unless something happens to Joe Mixon, which hopefully it doesn't. But Damian Pierce is, he probably wants to go somewhere else. And with this last game performance, this is almost like an audition for him. Say, hey, I can still do it. I'm still here. If anyone wants to come get me, come get me. So I think that he's, like I said, it's a good auditioning piece for him to hopefully be able to move on somewhere else. Where'd you go?
I thought about highlighting only players that helped their team with playoff positions.
Mm,
And so I really, really thought about talking about Bo Nix
okay.
because, he had an 82% completion rating. He had 4 touchdowns. He put away the Chiefs. Now I know they didn't play anybody, but they had to win this game because the Bengals won. So
Yeah.
it was a big game for them. But the more and more I thought about it, I thought about a young man who had 270 total yards. Um, and he accounted for 5 touchdowns for his team this past week. I thought about a young man that was benched this year for a journeyman quarterback. I thought about a young man that had a terrible season last year, and I thought about a team that's got to be looking at their quarterback in Bryce Young, and they have to be pretty fucking excited right now. And I wanted to highlight Bryce because I think that I am a fan of a team, the San Francisco 49ers, who had a quarterback once upon a time, and that man's name was Alex Smith. And they did this thing to Alex Smith where they gave him like 17 different offensive coordinators in his first 5 seasons, and they completely destroyed the start to his career. And then 49ers did the right thing and they hired a legitimate coach in Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh came in and stabilized his career. Obviously, we know he went on to the Chiefs and did great things with Andy Reid. And I just think it really goes to show you that as a young quarterback, consistency and having a great offensive mind is so important. And what Bryce Young has done this year, you have to be excited as a Panthers fan that
Oh, yeah,
he's
definitely.
because at the end of last year, you were not. You were
Right.
not excited. You were very, very nervous. And the start of this season, it was all bad. And just shout out to Bryce Young, man. He stuck in there. He clearly has some talent. I mean, he did the Steph Curry, turn his back to it, throw up the touchdown thing on the pass. That's the Lamar Jackson thing. And it's just I like to see the young man play with a little bit of swag. Clearly, he's a local guy to me. Well, not anymore, but he's out LA. Prayers and thoughts to LA right now. Those fires are crazy. So I'm always going to want to see. Honestly, I want every young quarterback to succeed and be successful.
Oh,
This year
yeah.
was fantastic. This quarterback class was fantastic. It was great. I'm always rooting for these guys. So Bryce Young gets my player of the week.
Oh, yeah, man. I think that when you look at a player that seemed like got his entire confidence back after being sat, he looks like the player that he was supposed to be coming out of Alabama now at this point. He's moving around the pocket a lot more confidently. He's buying time more confidently, exactly what he's using his legs. Um, his pocket presence was one of the worst things last year about him, and he looks great. And, it is kind of exciting to see what he can do because I'm a big Bryce Young fan. And I don't know a single person who really isn't whenever has his post games and he can smile and he can laugh and he can do his thing. I think everyone wins at that point because I don't think anyone's rooting against Bryce, especially with that organization. Did you have any
No, not
guys
at all.
did you have any guys that you wanted to shout out before we move to the defensive side?
I mean, uh, like I mentioned, Bo Nix did his thing.
Yeah.
Um, I actually let me pull up the stats real quick because I saw something on Sunday and I thought to myself that I think this man might be an NFL quarterback. And I know people are pretty excited about him and it's week 18 and nobody played anybody important, but um I don't know if you saw, I know that you haven't been watching football much because your team is but I'm a football addict, so even though my team freaking sucked, and I'm really just don't TikTok me. Where is the damn score? What are we doing here? This is absolutely embarrassing.
What are you looking for?
Um, I'm looking for Joe Milton, man.
22 of 29, 241 yards and a touchdown.
Thank you. Did you see the linebacker blitzed him and tried to hit him and just hit him and fell down and
Yeah.
Milton just
Yeah.
like looked at him like dog, I'm 6'5", 250. You can't bring that weak stuff in here.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean the man looks like a quarterback, does he not? I mean, he played with some pocket presence. He made some really good throws. Um, Obviously, 240 yards and a touchdown. I'm not saying he's going to be the Patriots quarterback going forward. I'm just
Right.
saying learn for a couple of more years, and who knows what's going to happen to him. So shout out to him.
Definitely. And the only other guy I want to go and shout out is a guy that still has a lot of questions around him, the caliber of player that he can be. But he had himself a pretty decent year, especially compared to last year. Quentin Johnson had 13 receptions for 186 yards on the day. Um, if he could build on this performance, build on this year, and move into next year, still a lot of problems with his hands, still a lot of problems on positioning. But he's explosive, he's big, he's an athlete. We know what Quentin Johnson can do, especially coming out of college. We know the athlete that he is supposed to be. If he could just clean up some of the stuff, build on this year, he could be a pretty good wide receiver. Pretty good is probably as far as I'll go to really vouch for the guy. But again, 13 receptions, 186 yards, nothing to scoff at on the day. Now moving into the defensive side of the ball, Drew, where did you go for your defensive player of the week?
I went I cheated. I mean, I went with Trey Hendrickson,
Okay,
obviously 3.5 sacks. He gets the title there. And it was an important game for them to win. They had to win the game to keep the playoff hopes alive. Now their playoffs, their playoff hopes got shattered in the absolute worst way. But hey, at least at the
yeah,
halftime of that Chiefs Broncos game, they were just like, all right, it's a wrap. Let's go to Cancun. And better
right,
than losing on the last play, I suppose. So I gave it to him just because he balled out all year on a shitty Bengals defense,
yeah.
and it just honestly there wasn't a ton of crazy defensive stuff this week.
No,
Maybe
I
just
agree.
because most of the games didn't matter, but yeah, it just I that's obviously 3.5 sacks. How can you beat it?
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out Nick Bonito because we haven't mentioned him this very much this year, and he's had a fantastic
Yeah.
year, racking up 2 sacks on the day. I believe he's fourth in the league in sacks. Now, obviously, it's a down year for sack totals in the league, I believe. If you look at the total top guys, but Nick had a fantastic year. That entire Broncos defense is great, setting a franchise record of most sacks in a single season, and he definitely contributes to that success of that team. And it's not just those front guys. Those front guys allow them to play so much cover zero on the back end. Obviously that benefits guys like Pasterton and Riley Moss. And so you got a great secondary back there, but the great secondary builds off of those great front seven guys. And Nick Bonito is um, definitely leading the front there. Him and Zach Allen are fantastic. So shout out to him for that. And then, hey, unfortunately, Drew was wrong on the year, just on the last game. Xavier McKinney picking up his last interception to go for 8 picks on the year. If you don't know, in the beginning of the year, Drew and I had a is Xavier McKinney gonna have over under 7.5 interceptions on the year? And I believe he had 4 at the time. It was like 4 weeks, 4 picks. And Drew said under, and he was right. All the way until week 18 where he picked up his 8th interception. Unfortunately, Drew just barely missed the bet by 1 game. So shout out to him for having a pick to ruin Drew's, victory lap. But again, main guy, Nick Bonito here. Any other guys you wanna shout out?
Um, the kid from the Bucks got the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. That was a super what's his name? Yaya.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, Diaby. Yeah.
yeah, but he is super important game for the Bucks. Obviously, that was one of the exciting games. Obviously, because the Falcons were playing, and you never know with Michael Penix out there what was going to happen.
Mhm.
Um, I saw a really, I saw a really really funny stat, and it was if the Jets played 1,165 snaps in Week 18, and Hassan Reddick played all 1,001 of those snaps and got 9.5 sacks, then that's what it would take for the Eagles to get the Jets' second round pick from that trade. So I thought I thought that was pretty funny. Talk about a super lackluster season from him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and move on to our top rookie performances. And we don't just choose one guy around here. We try to go with 3, usually with some alternates in there as well. So you get anywhere between 3 to 6 guys that we go ahead and shout out. Last regular season game that we could do this for the rookies. And then, we're really putting a big focus on next year's class. I know obviously you and I are already doing work on that one, so pretty exciting stuff. I'll go ahead and start it off with Nate Wiggins, pick six this week, giving having more touchdowns this season than giving up touchdowns. So having that pick six puts him inside that category. He's been fantastic all year, and getting this interception, his first career interception, having it be a pick six, and then just having the story of week 18 caps off the regular season. Again, he has more touchdowns on the regular season than he has actually given up as a corner. So shout out to him, man, because a lot of questions about him coming into the draft just because of his weight. And previous in the previous season, we in the previous draft, we just had the Washington Commanders take the lightest corner ever taken in the first round, and Emmanuel Forbes, and he's been fucking awful. And then Nate Wiggins gets taken as well, and he's very, very, very light. And then he also got injured during the combine, but he's fantastic now. So shout out to him. A lot of questions around him, and he's proven to be pretty damn good.
All those corners proved to be pretty good,
Right?
except for what's his face for Detroit. He didn't have a
Terry
great
on.
season.
Yeah.
I think the Commanders kid, Mike, he got a rookie of the week for his week 18 game against the Cowboys.
Yeah. Mike Sanders is
I
gonna get
gave
something.
I mean, what was crazy is I watched all season how well Renardo Green played for the 49ers.
Mhm.
And just looking at his PFF grade compared to some of these other rookies, the rookie corners, I mean, Cooper DeJean was just fantastic this year. Um, my rookie shout out, I'm going to shout out the tackle for Baltimore because did you see the clip
Oh,
with him and Miles
Rosengarten.
Garrett?
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
That was, I mean, talk about a class act to go up and talk to one of the best players of the NFL of all time. And
Yeah.
shout out to Miles Garrett for the most classiest possible freaking response. He's had a shitty time there in Cleveland, and to pass it down to a younger guy like that and give him the jersey. That honestly, that was just fantastic. So
Yeah, that's pretty
I
awesome.
wanted to spotlight that, my rookie of the week. I also wanted to spotlight um, I already talked about Bo Nix. We've been talking about Jaden Daniels all season.
Yep.
Shout out to Michael Penix, man. He comes in and the Falcons basically said that Kirk is the backup next year. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to cut him. But
Right.
shout out to Michael Penix for coming in and playing well enough to take over the starting job. And then I know you said you were going to mention people that you hadn't mentioned all year, but
Mm.
I'm just going to go back to Old Faithful. And no, it's not Brock Bowers, who
Okay.
should be the rookie of the year. This man in 15 of his 16 games this year, 15 of his 16 games allowed two or less pressures, not sacks, not hits, not, we're talking pressures. And that's going to be the Los Angeles
Oh, there you
Chargers
go.
tackle, Mr. Joe Alt.
Yep.
Joe Alt is already a perennial Pro Bowler, a perennial All Pro, and a future Hall of Famer. I mean,
Yeah.
he just made history. He made it in a great way. And when you're talking about a team that's going to run the piss out of the ball, and then they're going to do long developing play action plays, and you have a stalwart at tackle that is not giving up pressures. Shout out to him. He is one of the reasons why they are in the playoffs this year. So shout out to Joe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, dude, the rookie class has been so great. We were spoiled for our channel starting 1 year ago. Back in December, it was 1 year anniversary for that. So that was our first rookie class that we covered on the channel. At least Drew and I have been doing just mocking and big boards and positional rankings for fun for a couple years now. And last year was the first time we could put it out on the channel, and we just got absolutely spoiled by how good this class has really been. And it's been a lot of fun to be able to cover them week to week to week to week, to be able to shout out a couple of these guys. And um, hopefully this next class is at least on par to be just half as good, because if it's half as good, we'll still have a good year, talking about the rookies at the very least. I'm going to go ahead and shout out Jalen Coker, wide receiver, 7 receptions, 62 yards. And then I'm also going to go ahead and shout out, and I had a back and forth on which one I wanted to cover. because I thought you were going to cover the other guy. I'm going to shout both of them out. Fuck it. It's the last week. Peyton Wilson, linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was my number one linebacker on the board, 10 tackles, tackle for loss. He's had a great year this year. Actually, when he got into the starting position, very much like Edger and Cooper, both those guys
Yeah.
kind of got into the starting positions kind of later into the year, and then they've been great ever since. So shout out to both those guys because they've had fantastic years for a linebacker class that has been seen as pretty weak. Had a decent showing. And the last guy I thought you were going to go ahead and shout out is Ricky Gunshot Pearsall, 6 receptions, 69 yards, and a touchdown on the day. So shout out to him. Shout out to all the rookies, man. It's been fun to cover them all year. We're still going to make sure we take a look at them from playoffs to playoffs. But a couple of these guys we won't be able to shout out, right? Jalen Coker is never going to get that opportunity in the playoffs, Ricky Pearsall not going to get the opportunity in the playoffs. So Joe Milton not going to get the opportunity. so these guys aren't going to get the chances. So we want to make sure that we at least shouted them out for the final opportunity, the final time as rookies being shouted out on the channel. So great showing.
Yeah, and just to Ricky Pearsall with only one drop this year. Shout out to him for that. Chop Robinson, 4 pressures this past game. He had to play a bunch because of injuries. He actually led the Miami Dolphins with 56 pressures.
Yeah.
I mean, matter of fact,
Second
there.
in all rookies.
I think I really did. I didn't. I wasn't setting this up, but out of all those first round picks, um, Darius Robinson for the Cardinals was absolute ass this year.
They got hurt.
Um,
He hasn't played all year.
I know, and well, I also got to watch him get stonewalled by Dominic Pooney all week, all game, and then unfortunately, Graham Barton, little bit of a up and down year. Our boy Dallas Turner, not a great year, and then a certain tackle down there in Dallas.
Yeah,
Just
that dude
not.
fucking sucks. Hey, here's the thing. I've been very upset about the past 2 first round picks. And have I not been correct? I
Was
was so upset about it. And that had nothing to do with like with the Tyler Smith thing a couple of years ago where I was really pissed off, but it wasn't because of Tyler Smith. It was mainly because of who else was on the board. This was just like, what the fuck are we doing? That's why I was fucking pissed. And now we're stuck with Mozzie Smith and Tyler Guyton, who um are the worst graded players on the offensive side and the defensive side for the Dallas Cowboys. Just awful. Absolutely awful. Obviously, to me, Tyler Guyton was the worst first round pick this year. So I don't even know if it's close for me at all.
I also wanna shout out one more rookie. I know that I haven't personally said his name on the podcast this year. I don't know if you have. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jalen McMillan. Have you?
Yeah, I've mentioned him, a couple of times. He's had a pretty good year.
So
He had another
so he has a
50 something yards and another touchdown this year.
he had 8 touchdowns this year, dude. He had 8 touchdowns as a rookie, and he makes a huge play. He makes a huge play in the game, and
Yeah.
he does a stupid celebration. He gets a 15-yard penalty, and I was watching with my dad, and McMillan goes over to the sideline, and he must have had no less than 20 or 25 Buccaneers players come up and dap him up, slap him on the head, hit him on the shoulder pads. The love they have for this guy already as a rookie to come over and say, hey, you know what? You just cost us 15 yards, but it's going to be okay. And then 2 plays later, he catches an amazing pass in the corner for a touchdown in the end zone. So shout out to McMillan. He's had an incredible year.
Not only has he had an incredible year, but I mean, he didn't really even barely play until kind of the second half of the year. Like he didn't really get on the field that often. Yeah, he's been fantastic.
Well,
wide
I'll give
receivers from
it to you
Washington.
statistically. Weeks 14 through 18, he had 24 receptions, 316 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So on a that breakout stretch pace he had over a full season would have been 1,000 yards and 24 touchdowns.
Yep.
So just stupid. Oh, and the only other rookie that I want to mention, I want to see if I can find him. I want to see if I can find him and throw him up on the screen here, just because I think it was kind of hilarious. Um, I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you were watching, but there was a certain quarterback who's injured this year, and, I don't
Is
know
it
if you
Joe? Yeah.
saw
Hey, yeah, JJ McCarthy. Yeah. Yeah, I
JJ
saw that too. That
McCarthy
was pretty good.
looking like Anakin Skywalker, so although man, he was walking around on the sideline with a limp. He was limping over there, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, unfortunately, around here, not everyone can be winners. Some people, they have to be losers. And when you're a loser around here on the 2020 podcast, you only go to one place and one place only, and that's the doghouse.
Oh, oh.
That's where we place all of our losers from every single week. You can get out of the doghouse pretty easy. It's not you have a good performance the next week, you're out of the doghouse, no problem. Unless you're like Doug Peterson got put in there like week 3, never got out. I've had Patrick Mahomes in there. He got out the very next week. He was only in there for a couple of minutes and then he got out. He was all good. That was just for, injuring his wide throwing a pick and then, injuring his wide receiver on the tackle. But you know, everyone can be in the doghouse. No one is excluded. Wide receivers, quarterbacks, any player, any GM, any owner, any team, any fan, everyone can go in the doghouse. Anyone can get the smoke. This week, Drew, where did you go for your doghouse of the week? One person, a team. Where did you go with?
I got a couple. And
Okay.
I do want to give an update on my doghouse. Doug Peterson's no longer in the doghouse. You can't be in the doghouse if you're not employed in the
If you're not in the
NFL.
league.
So he's not in the doghouse anymore. So shout out to him. He finally got out. Um, my first person that's going to go into the doghouse is going to be Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Um, I,
Okay.
I know these wide receivers are so much drama, and his BS he did after the game, but I don't know if you saw the clip. Did you see the clip in the middle of the game in the third quarter where Jalen Waddle is asking him, "Are you done?" Like, he looks over and Tyreek Hill's standing over on the sideline with his helmet off, and Tyreek Waddle he goes, Cheetah, are you done? You're done, bro? Are you done?" And you can't hear what Tyreek Hill says, but that was it. He never came back into the game. So that's just dog shit behavior to me.
Especially
Um,
especially to one
you
of your young wide receivers that definitely looks up to you as a mentor. It just sucks. It's a bad look, man.
and you're getting paid, dog. You're the one
Yeah.
that you so to do this whole like I'm not out here just to be out here, like, bro, you got a quarterback that has gone through something terrible the past couple of seasons. He's trying to make its way back. And you go through you go through injuries and stuff. Not every team can be the Kansas City Chiefs where they're just perennial in the playoffs every single year. Look at it,
Yeah.
taking the Chiefs off the board, one of the most dominating teams of the past 5 or 6 years has been my team, the San Francisco 49ers. They came into this year and they got their asses whipped
Yeah.
every single week. Injuries happen, things happen, players aren't ready in preseason, players aren't ready in training camp. It just happens. And to quit on your team the last game of the week, that's such a terrible, terrible look, terrible behavior, and I just hate every second of it.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Man, especially when you bring up your team as well, the perseverance from Tua to come back, whether we agree with it or not, it's his own personal decision to come back from that. But also, you bring up your team and you have Devondre Campbell walking off in the middle of a game. After everything your team, your players, some of your guys have dealt with, Trent Williams, Tre'Davious Ward, those guys, going through what they've gone through this season, and you quit on them like that while they're out there trying to get back and trying to play and act like everything's okay at their job. So I'm there with you.
Especially
I hear you.
you got a player, not to segue it to the 49ers, but you got a player like Fred Warner. He's playing on a fractured ankle. You got
Yeah,
a player that Nick Bosa, he's had oblique injuries all year. You got players like George Kittle that give it their all, and then you're walking off the field refusing to go in. I just I hate that.
yeah,
The Dolphins organization it's a quality roster. It's a quality head coach. If their quarterback stays healthy, they're going to lose in the playoffs probably because they can't play in the cold. But it's just how do you quit on your team like that? And I just wish you know, he's unfortunately, when you make all the money and you're a good player, you get to be a diva a little bit. But
Right.
if I was the Dolphins, I would send him to like Tennessee or something. Like, go enjoy, nothing out there.
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely. Said you had a couple?
Oh yeah, Mr. Sam Darnold. Talking about the doghouse, the ability of the doghouse to be one of the best stories in the NFL all season.
Yeah.
To be, is he going to get 3 years 100? Is he going to get 4 years 140? Are
Yeah.
they going to trade JJ McCarthy in the offseason? And then in the biggest game of the season, you have your worst performance of the season, especially considering that me and you and talked about this last week. The 49ers whipped that Lions defense ass
That
with a
defense
bunch
is
of
has
nobodies
a
on the
lot of
offensive
holes.
line,
Yep.
and Darnold looked terrible. He looked absolutely like, I'm seeing ghosts out there. That famous Sam
Shout
Darnold
out.
thing. He looks absolutely terrible. Now that doesn't mean he doesn't come out next week and put the league back on fire. That's the benefit of the doghouse. 1 week you're in, 1 week you're out.
Yep.
So like you said, you put the second greatest quarterback of all time in the doghouse at one point this season. So
Yep.
that's just the thing.
That's the nature of it.
I do have one more.
Okay.
As we expand, I think we can expand the doghouse to, we've talked about head coaches, we've talked about owners. Um, I think we can also talk about, I think we could talk about broadcasters.
Oh,
I think we can talk about them continuing to give somebody like Deion Sanders a platform to talk about, if you want me to come coach your team, you better draft both my sons.
yeah.
Bro, nobody wants you to come coach their team. You're not an NFL head coach. I think you could be a great college coach. I think Dion can continue to be great. I think he could do some great things. You're not an NFL head coach. And
Right.
since we're putting the doghouse out to broadcasters, people that you see on TV, we're going to talk about NFL media. We're going to talk about people with podcasts. The last person I'm putting in my doghouse for the regular season is going to be your ass, because I told you about the Buffalo Bills this year, and you and me argued about it. We argued about it all season.
Shit.
Josh Allen is the second best quarterback in the league this year. Shout out to Lamar. So that's going to be my last little doghouse, is you for not having the Buffalo Bills on your preseason power ranking top 10. And if I had to guess, they're either number 1 or number 2 at the end of the season. So shout out to the Bills. Shout out to that quarterback from Firebaugh, California. And that's all I got. And I mean, the Raiders are always in the doghouse. They fired their GM 2
Hell yeah.
minutes ago,
Yep.
after
Absolutely.
firing their coach 2 days ago. And now they got no GM, they got no coach, they got no quarterback. And that stupid head coach that they fired was celebrating the fact that they won games to take themselves out of the quarterback, scenario. So I'm pretty sure, little breaking news, I'm pretty sure somebody's going to be calling Jameis Winston this offseason and begging him to come to Las Vegas. Or Tom Brady will come out of retirement. That's the only, that's got Las Vegas written all over it.
My doghouse is short. Sweet. Kansas City and Carson Wentz. Fuck you guys for ripping away the opportunity to see Joe Burrow and the Bengals in the playoffs. And giving your division rivals a chance to get in. So that's kind of just my doghouse. Is I would have rather have seen. I like Bo and the Broncos getting in. I don't mind it. I think it's better than Indy getting in. I think it's better than Miami getting in. I think it's better than any of those teams who even got close to the cusp of getting there. I think it's the best outcome outside of the Bengals, and the Bengals probably would have lost in the first round, but it would have been entertaining football at the very least because we know what Joe Burrow can do. So that's the only part that sucks is again letting your division rivals get into the playoffs, but I mean, the Chargers are in the playoffs, the Broncos are in the playoffs, the Chiefs are in the playoffs, and on the other side, you got the Packers in the playoffs, you got the Vikings in the playoffs, you got the Lions in the playoffs. So, yeah, dominating divisions for both sides. But that's all I got for Doghouse of the Week.
Yeah, and talk about a guy who could have made himself some money this offseason, and Carson Wentz, and he shit the bed. So
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna put him in the doghouse, but you had a chance, dog, and you did not pull it off. So
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and move away from all of our winners and losers basically from the week. And let's move into our power rankings for week 18. Usually, how we do this is we just do a top 10. We don't want to spend fucking 45 minutes to go over power rankings for all 32 teams every single week because that would just be fucking exhausting. And then we would have a 3 hour podcast instead of a 2 hour podcast. It's already long enough as it is. And this one, I don't think it's going to be super long because, we can lightning round, 5 by 5 basically. Um, but yeah, top 32. This is how we're gonna do it. Drew, let's go ahead and start off 32 to 28. Um, you'll fire off yours, I'll fire off mine. If we want to talk about positioning of within those five, we totally can. If we're like, yeah, we're totally in lockstep agreement, let's move on to the next set. Good?
absolutely. Small caveat as I give you 28 through 32. I am ranking my power rankings not on how they ended the season, but how I think we're going into next season. I am going
Oh,
to
okay.
take into consideration that the Titans have the first round pick. I am going to take into consideration that the Titans have $61 million in cap space right now.
Okay.
Things of that nature. That being said, um, at 32, I do have the Tennessee Titans. Um, they fired their GM this offseason. They're keeping their head coach.
Yeah.
They don't have a quarterback on the roster. They don't have a bridge quarterback on the roster. Bringing Shedeur Sanders in or Cam Ward in and having him learn from Will Levis or Mason Rudolph is not the answer. So you
Right.
got to draft a guy and you got to go get a guy. They spent, and the other problem is they spent a ton of money this offseason. They trade for a corner. They bring in Tony Pollard. They do all these things
Calvin
and they come out
Ridley.
and they win.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yep.
come out and they win 3 games.
Yep.
So that's to me, that's terrible. Um, and the only thing that Tennessee Titans have going for them is that those Houston Oilers jerseys looked legit on the TV last Sunday.
Yeah. I do enjoy the pettiness of Tennessee always seeming to wear the Houston Oilers jerseys, always playing Houston. Uh, coincidentally, I guess you could say. Yeah, I always join that a little bit. Um, I'm gonna fire off my 32 to 28. 32 I have the New York Giants. 31 I have the Cleveland Browns. 30 I have the Tennessee Titans. 29 I have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and 28 I have the Las Vegas Raiders.
Okay, so I'm with you. 32 is the Titans, 31 is the Browns. The
Yeah.
Browns, they got some defensive pieces, but their quarterback situation's a mess.
Yep.
At 29, I have the New York Giants. I don't really know what the hell they're going to do this offseason. They screwed themselves out of the quarterbacks. Drew Lock is not the answer. I don't care what Brian Dayball says. They have a lot of things they need to fix. Who'd you have at 28,
I had
29?
the 29, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay. The thing about the Jacksonville Jaguars is that they have a really good roster on paper. So if they bring the right head coach in, that something could change.
Sure.
And then at 28, I have the New England Patriots. I wanted to rank the Patriots higher because I think they're going to hire Vrabel,
Mhm.
but they haven't yet. So I won't. I'm going to leave them here. But the fact that they decided to get rid of Gerard Mayo and they're going to bring in a real head coach this offseason makes me think with the fact that they have Drake May, who was up and down this year,
Yep.
and that they are in the position where they are probably going to take the first wide receiver off the board in Mr. McMillan. I know Travis will go before him, but I think Travis should be a corner. So they have an opportunity to upgrade in a couple of places this offseason. So I got them at 28.
Yeah, I think with just explaining some of the positioning stuff, I think that the Titans have a more talented roster than, especially the Giants. They're the bottom of the barrel to me. I'm not sure where the talent is around there. I know Tyrone Tracy had a pretty decent year. He didn't quite hit 1,000. He had 1,000 scrimmage yards. I know that. The offensive line has holes all over it. Evan Neal's like the worst starting offensive lineman in the league right now. Um, one of the worst right tackles in the league, maybe right next to Terrence Steele because he's a fucking dog pile piece of shit too. You have Malik Neighbors, and then what? what's after him, right? No quarterback.
That's a pretty good number one, though.
That is a pretty good number one, but then you're wondering on what you do with the rest of it. Obviously, a couple defensive pieces. You got Big Boy in the middle, who's one of the best defensive players in the league right now. I know Brian Burns is obviously over there, but then the rest of it's just kind of you don't know what you're doing with the rest of it. So I don't think the roster is super talented compared to some of the other teams that are in front of them. Um, you could basically toss up Tennessee, Cleveland, and New York, and take your pick of what team you want to start a franchise, you want to start and pick, and what you want to GM. And you're not going to be in a great position either way. With some of those Tennessee pieces, I know some of them got hurt and they were up and down a little bit on the year. And some of it was Will Levis quarterback play on not being able to get performance out of him. So I still believe in
We're
a
going
lot
to
of
talk
stuff.
about Tennessee, though. So
Yeah. Tennessee, obviously, we'll cover a lot of that later on. Um, and then the Raiders are just a fucking hellhole situation that always seems to be stuck at the bottom of the barrel. So I did rank them at 28 behind some of these other teams that I don't see teams really. I see half decent teams once we get to like 24. That's when like the half decent teams to me start. Um, but starting off with the next five, 27 through 23, Drew. 27, I had the New England Patriots, so just one spot ahead of the Las Vegas Raiders. A lot of that has to come with Drake May and how I believe in Drake and the pieces that they can have over there. Um,
and I have the Raiders there, just to be clear. So we're completely even through 27.
I have the New Orleans Saints here at 26. I have the New York Jets at 25. A lot of talent on the roster for New York. Here's where the half decent teams can start, depending on how coaching can go, how you can beef up that fucking offensive line. Chicago Bears at 24, and the uh, great led uh, Carolina Panthers at 23, Bryce Young. So that's my 27 through 23. Again, I think Chicago and Carolina could be a lot better next year, depending on how you kind of build up those teams, depending on who you hire, and how you again build around that offensive line for both those teams. Because I think that's where a lot of your problems start, and your defense for Carolina is pretty god awful. But I love Bryce, so he's sitting right at the top of the okay team. He's half decent.
Yeah, the Bears and the Panthers have to live there because they have quarterbacks.
Yep.
The Saints don't have a quarterback.
Yep.
Spencer Rattler was cool, but he's not a starting quarterback in the league, at least not right now.
Yeah.
The Jets are a complete dumpster fire.
Yeah.
The Jets let the owner and the quarterback run the team all season. They fired their head coach. They fired their GM. Aaron Rodgers loaded up the team with all his friends. They all sucked. He pointed fingers. He did his Aaron Rodgers shit, tarnished his legacy. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that it was New York, I'd have them even lower. But the problem is when you're New York, when you're LA, when you're bitch ass Boston, you get to just bring these guys in because people want to play in these cities. So
Yep.
they're going to get recruits
Yeah.
and they're going to be okay. But I'm higher on the Bears going forward than the Panthers just a bit because I think the Bears, all they need is a coach.
Yeah.
If Bears don't get out their paycheck, their checkbook, I got one right here for everybody. I know if you're young, you probably don't know what this is, but this is how you write checks. If the Bears don't get out their checkbook and go offer $20 million a year to Ben Johnson to be their head coach, I don't know what they're doing. That's what I would recommend. So
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So would you have 27 through 23?
I had them in a little bit of different order. I
Okay.
had the Panthers at 23. I had the Bears at 24, Saints at 25. I had
Okay.
the Jets at 27 because they're a dumpster fire. I think this is really where it gets interesting though. At 22, I got the Indianapolis Colts.
Oh, okay.
They have a question there with their young quarterback.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
I actually had them a little higher, but then I started reading some of the stuff DeForest Buckner said about Anthony Richardson, a couple other things, and maybe put a little baby red flag on that. So,
Yep.
but he is hella talented. You still have a Jonathan Taylor. You still have a Michael Pittman. You still have Shane Steichen. Like
Yep.
there's options there. At 21, I got the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
They're hella talented. I don't know what happened to them this year. Obviously, we got the bad Kirk Cousins this year. So they are probably right back in the middle of being favorites to win their division next year, but they're 8-9 this year. So I had to leave them out. At 19, I'm sorry, at 20, I got the Miami Dolphins. The reason for that is you got your best player saying that he doesn't want to play here anymore. You have your young running back that really fell off this year. You have your quarterback who probably shouldn't play quarterback anymore, and you don't have a replacement on the roster. And it's just one of those things going through there every year. Um, at 19, I got the Arizona Cardinals. I think it was a disappointing season for their draft picks. I know
Sure.
Darius Robinson got hurt, but he was not good in the time he played. Marvin Harrison Jr., you see the talent every time he takes the field, but when you compare him to a Malik Neighbors and some of the other stuff that happened this year, wasn't the um, so-called greatest, rookie wide receiver this year. And then at these next two teams, I might be going one too many, but I want to sneak in the 49ers and the Cowboys. I don't really care where you rank them. If you want to rank them at 17 and 18 or whatever, 18 and 17, 17 and 16. Um, the Dallas Cowboys don't have a head coach right now,
Mhm.
technically speaking. And that's meanings you don't have a coaching staff, which is this never happens in the league. Jerry Jones did finally get back to the Bears, by the way, and say they couldn't interview Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
But and then, the 49ers, they fired their defensive coordinator. They gave their press conference yesterday. They're going to cut Hargrave. They're going to send him out. They want to bring Debo back next year.
Right.
Um, and Kyle Shanahan basically admitted that he is going to do a full search for a defensive coordinator this year, and they're going to try to bring in somebody that can do something different. For a couple of years now, they promoted D'Amico Ryans and they said run our defense. They gave the job to Steve Wilkes and they said run our defense. They promoted
Right.
Nick Soros and they said run our defense. And now it sounds like this year they're actually going to bring somebody in and say improve our defense. So
Yeah.
that excites me at least. We got a really high pick this year. Um, so yeah. Plus the
Sure.
rosters, the Cowboys and the 49ers rosters are hella talented.
Mhm.
So if they just come back healthy and everyone shows up for training camp, they should be in competition to win their divisions next year. So
Right. Obviously, like you already said, you're doing this off of what put part of it goes into next year's stuff too. I didn't take that much into account for next year. But just a little bit. At 22, I did have the Atlanta Falcons. 21, I had the Indianapolis Colts. 20, I had the Arizona Cardinals. 19, I had the Dallas Cowboys. And 18, I had the San Francisco 49ers. So those are my five. Um, I really like Michael Penix. I've always liked Michael Penix. I've always been the Michael Penix stan, I feel like. And the Colts have a really talented roster from front to back. They really do. The last piece is that quarterback. Not only can he stay healthy, does he want to play football? What does he want to play football? How often does he want to practice? Like all that stuff comes into account for Anthony Richardson. And just like you said, red flag a little bit. The Anthony Richardson situation. The entire year has been tumultuous. You had him sitting out and opting in for surgery his first year. Totally supported it. You're a young player, career ahead of you. Totally on board with you. You take care of your own personal self. And then in the second year, just ups and downs and getting benched and some of your oh, man, it's not been a good look for Anthony Richardson. So he has to have a bounce back year this next year. It's gonna be trouble in Indy. At 20 Arizona Cardinals. I still think the roster's pretty talented. I think what you said, the first round picks maybe not, you know, haven't splashed as much, but Marvin Harrison Jr. still had a good year. 850-ish yards is somewhere in the ballpark of where he was at. If you match him up with Marvin Harrison Sr., they had almost the exact identical seasons. I think they were spaced out like 10 yards difference, one reception different, and like one touchdown different. They're almost the exact same player. Um, so shout out to him having a pretty good season, but I still think the roster's super talented. James Conner, super talented. The running back behind him, pretty talented. Trey Benson. But then those teams in front of them, the Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers, again, a lot of that is based off of this year, not so much off of next year. If we're looking at what happens off next year, when we do power rankings right before the season starts, those two teams are definitely going to be pushed up pretty significantly, especially depending on what goes on in the offseason, who gets hired, who doesn't, and then what happens with those draft picks. It definitely depends on how much those teams get pushed up. And then you
did you
did say
mention the Dolphins yet?
this. You mentioned 17, right? Did you
Yeah,
have
I got to
17?
7.
So I'll do 17 as well. 17, I did have the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
Um, I think with how the season started, what happened in the big chunk in the middle of the season with Tua, the distraction of that, what happened with Tua was just awful. But then him coming back, being able to play, and then being able to at least compete is pretty significant in my eyes. I think that Miami is still a really good team. Tyreek did not have a good year. Um, Going back and looking at some of our preseason predictions and stuff about who was going to win some awards and whatnot, and you talking about Tyreek winning Offensive Player of the Year to start, again, this is preseason predictions that we said. It was a lot of back and forth between you and I said I'm not so sure about his age and performance, and can he keep up another 1,700, almost 1,800 yard? I'm not so sure, and he didn't, unfortunately. But I think Jalen Waddle can take the team by the reins, and let's see where this team goes because I still think this is a pretty significantly good team at 17. Let's go ahead and spit off 16 to 11, and then we could do our 10 through 6 and then 5 through 1. Because
Okay.
spoiler alert, my top 10 didn't really change. So
16, I got the Seahawks.
so
I
did I.
guess the highest rated non-playoff team.
Hmm.
10 and 7 is an incredible year. It's a shitty year to miss the playoffs. Sucks for them. Um, I would say most of the I mean, maybe not. They're adding games, so 10 and 7 isn't what it used to be. But at 15, I got the Houston Texans. A lot of that just comes down to wide receiver
Did
injuries
you
this year. A little
real quick? I'm interrupting. Did you say the Bengals yet?
no.
Okay. Well, you said highest rated non-playoff team, so
Okay, I mean, all right, you're right. You're right. You're right.
sorry, I had
I
to
got
stop.
I got I got a little lost on the next year stuff also. Um, at 15, I have the Houston Texans. And I know that may seem crazy because the next team is the Bengals, but tons of injuries. They're going to be one and done in the playoffs this year.
Yeah,
And I think I got them more sitting here just because of I think they came into the NFL this year like preseason rankings at like 3 or 4. Like people were
I
super high on this
yep.
team. I know you were.
Mhm.
And I just didn't think that he could recreate what he did last year. So hard to do that as a sophomore quarterback.
Yeah,
And frankly, he had a shit ton of injuries, so it's really not his fault either. The wide receivers, every single one of his wide receivers got hurt this year. So
yep,
freaking Tank Dell, man, that just um at 14, I do have the Cincinnati Bengals. They didn't make the playoffs. They got the worst defense in the history of the NFL. Joey Burrow is the third best quarterback in the history of the NFL. All the stuff we talk about, he should be in MVP talks. Can't be an MVP when your team doesn't make the playoffs, but
yep.
it is what it is. After that, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mhm. Okay, cool.
Um, they are the team in the playoffs that I believe in the least amount because they have not looked great the past couple of weeks. People were talking about giving Russ Wilson the 3-year 100, the Baker Mayfield contract. I don't think he's getting anything. He has not looked great.
Yeah,
Number 13, I'm going with the Denver Broncos. The number 12, I kind of got lost.
they're good.
Denver Broncos, again, I think they're going to be, one and done in the playoffs this year, but it doesn't matter. Hell of a season for a young team. And then I want to shout out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I want to shout out Mike Evans for his incredible thing. And I also want to shout out the Saints because the Saints let him have it. And I think that's super, super class act. Baker Mayfield was freaking out a little bit when Bucky Irving ran in
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
touchdown. Um, and because that meant that they were going to lose it. And then obviously the Bucks came out. They didn't come out in the victory formation. They came out to get Mike Evans what he needed to get, and the Saints let him have it. And I know that there was a lot of criticism when I think it was Brett Favre fell down to give Michael Strahan the sack record at the time. I don't really care, man. Like it's a hell of an accomplishment for Mike Evans, and I'm glad he got it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're lockstep for the Seattle Seahawks at 16 for me. We have 14 and 15 flipped, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Houston Texans.
It's
It
probably right.
it is just playoffs, you're flipped, you're not in the playoffs. I flipped those 2. So, yeah, Cincinnati at 15, Houston at 14. Now, if those 2 teams face each other today, I don't know actually who I would fully pick. because I think that'd be a hell of a game. Pittsburgh is at 13. I think this how they kind of pitter pattered out for the last couple of weeks has been pretty disappointing considering how good that defense is. Russell Wilson came in. He said, "Oh, I am the starter." Was the starter, looked like the starter, and then now you're sitting here right back with square one with Russell Wilson. And then 12 and 11, I have flipped as well. Tampa Bay is at 12, Denver is at 11. I think Bo Nix is playing just as well as Baker Mayfield this year, and the defense for the Broncos is better. So I think that Denver is the better team. Looking at those two teams back to back. I think when it comes to Denver just sneaking into the playoffs compared to Tampa Bay, you look at the divisions. You look at a division that you have three teams making the playoffs with Kansas City, LA, and Denver obviously making it in, and you have Tampa playing in a division where they barely squeaked it out to win their division, and you had fucking Atlanta, New Orleans, and Carolina. I think Denver is definitely the superior team right there.
I have a little bit more breaking news for the podcast.
Okay.
Carson Beck,
Oh
starting
yeah,
quarterback
I
for
saw that.
Georgia, just entered the transfer portal,
Yep, after
which
declaring for the
makes
draft.
it sound like he is not going to come out for the draft this year,
Yep.
which is interesting. They expect him to be the highest paid transfer portal player in NCAA history. So
I mean, hey man, makes sense.
Sacramento State, go get him.
Yeah, I mean, shit, dude, he's gonna be 24 years old by the time the next draft rolls around. 24 and a half, damn near. So he's by the time he's midway through his rookie season, he's gonna be 25 years old. Um,
Brandon Whedon, baby.
and I listen, I get it. I know Michael Penix is up there in age as well, but the problem is Michael Penix has all the talent in the world. And Carson Beck, well, we see where he's ranked on big boards. So big reason on why he's staying in the transfer portal. I think he's going to make more money in the transfer portal than he was in the draft this year, very easily.
That that's the craziness of the NIL money, man. That
Hmm.
Sac State just got a former 5-star wide receiver recruit from Alabama.
Hmm.
Now he's had some run-ins with the law, but do you know, not to hijack football podcast, but do you know the number one high school basketball recruit in the country? The number one recruit in the country. Do you know who he signed with this year?
No.
BYU.
Oh shit, did he?
That doesn't scream NCAA basketball powerhouse, but
Right.
BYU just got the number one. This money, the NIL money,
It
shit's
changes it.
crazy.
Absolutely.
So
We can
give
jump.
me your 11 again. Not the
My
Bucks,
the Broncos.
Broncos. Okay, so
Yep.
we flipped. Okay,
Mhm. Yep. Um,
so 10. Are we still the same team at 10?
the Chargers.
The Chargers.
Hmm.
Okay, we're good there.
Yep.
Who do you got at 9?
The Rams.
I got the Rams at 9. Who do we got at 8?
The Commanders.
You're a bastard. You didn't change that. I got the Packers at 8. You have the Packers at 7.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, so you and me are me and flip. You guys are flip flopped. You didn't like that last minute scary Terry touchdown to win the game last week. Marcus Mariota. You didn't watch it, did you?
I don't give a fuck.
Who do we got at number 6?
The Baltimore Ravens.
Bro, this is the Minnesota Vikings. They just got their ass smashed. The
Don't
Baltimore
care.
Ravens are not worse than the Vikings.
I don't care.
If the Baltimore Ravens and the Vikings were playing this week, who would win?
I don't know.
Damn it. And I picked the Vikings to win last week and they got embarrassed. I'm a little scalded. Fuck the Vikings. I got the Vikings at 6.
Okay.
Sam Darnold is seeing ghosts.
Okay.
Who you got at 5?
Minnesota.
All right. Whatever. I don't. I got the Ravens at 5. So we're
Okay.
we're
flipped there.
good.
Okay, cool.
And this is going to be a flip too. Who you got at 4?
Philly.
Yeah, okay. You're up. Yep. Who you got at 3?
Kansas City.
Isn't that crazy? 15-2. We are disrespecting the Chiefs out loud. For all the listeners, at the beginning of this season, when we did our preseason power rankings, and he didn't have the Buffalo Bills on it, I told him, I said, bro, if we were big if we were syndicated, if we were on, you know, the if we were on the Blue Wire network or if we were on the Locked On network or anything like that, I would not let you go on and embarrass us by not having the Bills on top 10. I wouldn't have let it happen. And I honestly, I think we're embarrassing ourselves by having the Chiefs at 3, but we'll see how it goes. So then number 2 is the Lions, number 1's the Bills.
Yep.
So the Lions' performance in Week 18 wasn't enough for you to put them ahead of the Bills.
No, because the Bills didn't. Here's the thing with the top 10. I said before we really started, my top 10 didn't really change. And that's just because most of the teams here didn't play meaningful games. Buffalo didn't play a meaningful game. So didn't really fucking matter. I'm not going to change them because they didn't play a meaningful game. Detroit did, but they stuck at the number 2 because they can't flop with the number 1 because they didn't play a meaningful game. Kansas City didn't play a meaningful game. Like these teams didn't play meaningful games. Starters didn't play. Philly didn't play. Meaningful game. So that's kind of where I have that stat. Is most of my top 10 did not change just because the week 18 didn't really matter that much. So that's how I went forward with that one. But yeah, all my changes came from 11 to 32 when we put the whole thing together. But that's our power rankings. The only really big power rankings that we've done for all 32 teams, we've really only done power rankings for top 10s up to this point. I think when we head into next season, we'll do a 32 power rankings heading into the year. Should be a lot of fun. But before that, we got so much going on, including we had Black Monday. All the coaching firings happened on Monday this week. Coaching carousel, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Chicago Bears, New England Patriots, the New Orleans Saints, New York Jets, and the aforementioned, always mentioned Las Vegas Raiders, where they're going to be paying 4 coaches at one time while only having 1 on the roster, is also part of the coaching carousel. So let's go ahead and start off with that. Then we can move into fixing the Tennessee Titans and then ending it off with our wild card predictions, which I'm sure a lot of people definitely they're kind of waiting for, but I want to leave it for last because we're only a couple days from that. Coaching carousel, Jacksonville Jaguars, man. They're interviewing a handful of people. All the big names, essentially. You have the Lions defense coordinator and their offensive coordinator being interviewed. Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, the Bucks offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, sucks ass. He's being interviewed as well. Todd Munkin, the Ravens offensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, the Raiders defense coordinator, Robert Saleh, former Jets head coach, and Joe Brady, the Bills offensive coordinator, is also being interviewed for that position in Jacksonville. So a couple questions for you, Drew. One, how enticing is this job in Jacksonville? Two, are any of those names are the names who are going to get hired? Who do you see mainly getting hired there? What's the outlook for Jacksonville?
You know what? I think the roster is supremely talented. I think there's questions about, um, God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think there's questions about Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Not That's not the part. So I think that you bring in a head coach, a young head coach that can get one on one with Trevor Lawrence, a guy that can, when
Yeah.
things are going bad on the sideline, can go over to him and talk him through what's going on. And I think that what a lot of people would say is that's Ben Johnson, but there's better jobs out there and it's not going to be Ben Johnson. I think, as random as this may sound, and you can stitch together the things where I've been critical of this man this season, but Shad Khan is a dumpster fire of an owner. Trent Baalke is a dumpster fire of um, a general manager. So they're going to need a player, a guy, a head coach that's a little desperate for the job.
Yeah.
And I think this might be a situation where you might see someone like Kellen Moore take this
Mm,
as the head coaching position. Super young play caller. I know I'm with you. I'm with
yeah.
you. But I just think that's the situation that the Jaguars have found themselves in.
Yeah, I don't think looking at it from the way that you're looking at it in terms of the desperateness of the Jacksonville Jaguars and people maybe not wanting to take the job so much, I think that's definitely a line of thinking. I think the ideal candidate for them would be like a Todd Munkin. What Lamar Jackson has done over the past 2 years, obviously Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson. Big advocate for Lamar Jackson over here. Both of us. But man, what he has done has been next level this year, and a lot of it has been the Todd Munkin offense being comfortable in it. Um, and you have Trevor Lawrence, locked up for the next couple of years. So if it takes until year 2 to get comfortable with an offense like that, and then you can see performance out of it, the Jacksonville isn't 1 year away from making the playoffs, 2 years, maybe, but I think that'd be the ideal candidate. Kellen Moore, with Drew's line of thinking, I think definitely 100% makes sense. What about the,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Fuck off. Um, Chicago Bears are interviewing a slew of people. Drew Petzing, Cardinals offensive coordinator, Brian Flores, we all know. Arthur Smith, we all know. Ben Johnson, obviously mentioned already. Aaron Glenn, already mentioned. Anthony Weaver, the Dolphins defensive coordinator. Pete Carroll, actually. Mike Kafka, the Giants offensive coordinator. Mike Vrabel, big name, obviously. David Shaw, former Stanford head coach and current Broncos senior personal executive. Todd Munkin, once again, and Joe Brady again. So Chicago, once again, same questions. Um, but I think for Chicago, this is a super enticing job, right? You look at the roster front to back, and you look at what they have on paper. It's talent out the ass. You have a young quarterback with all the talent in the world. Still passed for 3,600 yards. He didn't throw a whole lot of picks on the year. His touchdown interception ratio was not bad at all. Man, the offensive line is horrible. I think this is a team that you want to look for a guy that is going to be really good with the quarterback position because there was some stuff that Caleb had to work through. He's like rated the worst quarterback on like evading pressure. Um, and it's not because of his athleticism, it's due to his decision making, it's due to his pocket presence this year. Playing in structure, something that a lot of people were concerned about with Caleb moving into his rookie season. I think some of that definitely proved. So I think you're looking at guys like this would be a very, very enticing position for a guy like Ben Johnson because again, it's a lot of talent around this roster. So Ben Johnson, I definitely think would be a pretty spot on guy to go hire out. Todd Monken, I've obviously mentioned as well, or Joe Brady. Any one of those three guys, I think, for looking at it from the quarterback positioning, um, I wouldn't be surprised if they went with a defensive guy and Brian Flores got brought over as well, though. Where do you kind of see this going?
I think it's Ben Johnson. I don't
Yeah.
think there's any type of honestly, if I was the Chicago Bears and we put their ownership in the doghouse, I put their ownership in the doghouse earlier this
Yeah.
season. This is what I would do. I would call up Ben Johnson. I would hire him immediately, and then I would call up Robert Saleh, and I would bring him in as the defensive coordinator. He's going to interview with the 49ers for their defense coordinator. I don't think we're going to go that route. Um, that's what I would do. I would get the absolute best young offensive coordinator out there and bring him in to help Caleb because that defense is that defense is that defense. That
Yeah.
you can go get a Mike Zimmer to run that defense. You can go get, you know, any name your defensive coordinator. You could go get him. I think Ben Johnson is the answer there.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. Now
And
looking
I don't know what job that's out there that Ben Johnson would want more. If you take money off the
outside of
table,
this, no.
if the Bears are going to play, what's got the best young offensive team?
Yep.
I don't.
No, 100%.
So
Yeah, when you look at the candidates of Jacksonville, Chicago, New England, New Orleans, New York, and Las Vegas, it's head and shoulders Chicago's job opening is the most enticing out of all of them and the most sought after coach, um, offensive coordinator in the league right now. He should have first pickings on that. And right now that's going to be Ben Johnson, and then right behind him, if we're talking about offensive coordinators, probably it's probably Joe Brady. So between both those guys, I think they have their kind of pick of litter. I think Joe Brady might stay an extra year. Actually, I don't know if he's actually going to go anywhere else if he doesn't get his pick.
I'm with you on Joe Brady 100%. My thing is if I'm Joe Brady, I'm not taking that Jags job. I'll wait another
Oh no,
year
yeah,
with my quarterback I got now. I'll look good for another year.
mhm,
That's why I picked the Kellen Moore because it's like Ben Johnson ain't taking that job. You know what I'm
no,
saying? Like, do you want to give it? Do you want to get, the Jags randomly Bobby Slowick? the Houston Texans offensive coordinator, was fantastic last year, dealt with injuries this year. That might be the type of first time young head coach that takes the Jags job, a Kellen Moore type situation, in my opinion. But yeah, Ben Johnson has his pick of the litter, in my opinion, and he should pick the Bears.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Next up, we have the New England Patriots, and only a couple of names here. Hamilton, longtime NFL assistant head coach. Brian Leftwich, former Bucks offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson, and then finally Mike Vrabel. Yep,
I have
Mike,
no other words on this. They're
absolutely,
hiring Mike Vrabel.
and they should. With the quality of coach that Mike Vrabel is, I think he instills. The Patriots are looking for a guy who can instill a culture into the Patriots locker room. And Mike Vrabel
Yes.
brings that to a team. What he did with Tennessee was fantastic, 100%. And because fucking dumbass Titans organization heads, they did not like Mike Vrabel. If you don't know the story of Mike Vrabel and what happened with the ownership and the back and forth, you got to go look it up because it's Mike Vrabel got screwed. He didn't get what he wanted on getting some more control over that team, even though he proved head and shoulders
And
above
they
that he was.
fired the GM now.
Yep.
So you punted Vrabel. Now I think their coach they got, I think he's a good head coach. So
Yes.
I'm not, but you punted Vrabel to keep the GM, and now you got rid of the GM. So both
Mhm.
the guys are gone. How does that make sense? It's just
Yep.
stupid.
Yep. And they also didn't like his comments. There was some type of Patriots, like talking. He was speaking at a Patriots event because obviously former Patriots linebacker. And he said comments. His main comments that they had a problem with apparently were, "You fans should appreciate what you have here. There's not another organization out there like it." And when he was asked about it and he got sat down by ownership, "What did you mean by that?" He was like, "They've won like 6 Super Bowls. What do you mean?" That's all I meant. They're Super Bowl champs. That's all I meant by it. And they got their panties in a bunch about that, and it kind of started this downhill like slide over these stupid fucking comments. And you lost a really good head coach, and you fired him after the fact of like when all the hiring jobs were already like all the open positions were already filled up. So you did it on purpose. So fuck these guys. Yeah.
And that shit is so dumb. If you can't look yourself in the mirror and accept your own criticisms, like, listen,
So stupid.
I know for a fact that your wife loves you, but Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt, dog. Like, it just is what it is. That dude that played in the new Bob Dylan movie, Timothy
Chalamet, yeah.
Chalamet, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that. Those dudes are those dudes. Like, we just, we don't box, and we can't box Muhammad Ali. It just
Right.
is what it is. Like, Tennessee Titans, you guys are literally a dumpster fire compared to the New England Patriots of
Yep.
last year and before. It's one of the greatest organizations in sports. Like, you're
Yep.
talking about, you know, it's it just is what it is. You're talking about the Patriots, you're talking about the Chiefs, you're talking
Yep.
about up until a couple years ago, the San Antonio Spurs. Like, these are just world renowned, well known, well ran organizations. And to get your
Yep.
panties in a bunch over that is just, it's a joke. So yeah, Vrabel, Patriots head coach. I'm honestly surprised that it hasn't popped up as breaking news already.
Yep.
So I know the NFL has really pushed back the hiring cycle. They really want to give these other teams a chance. That's part of the reason why the 49ers have been struggling in the past couple of years to bring on a really good defensive coordinator, because they come out of NFC championship games and everybody's hired. So yeah, Vrabel to the Patriots.
Absolutely. Looking now at probably one of the most undesirable jobs in the league, and that is the New Orleans Saints. Not a whole lot here as well in terms of names that have been announced that are being interviewed. Aaron Glenn, once again, Joe Brady, once again, Kellen Moore, once again, David Shaw, just a reminder, former Stanford head coach and current Broncos personal executive. And then familiar face, Darren Rizzi, the Saints interim head coach, also getting an interview as well. Man, is there
This is
is
this
there
is the
is there a job that's less desirable than this one out of all 6 positions?
that's why this is the Aaron Glenn job, in my opinion. That's
Oh,
why
yeah.
I personally, I think the Jets is less desirable than this, but because New Orleans, you don't have to deal with the media.
The
But
media
I
of it,
I
that's
have
fair, yeah.
I at the Saints job and at the Jets job, I have two guys that are going to need to take a gamble on an opportunity because their stock isn't super high. Um, Everybody's super high on Aaron Glenn. Um, I know his defense had a ton of injuries this year. So It sounds like he's gonna get hired this cycle, and it seems
Yeah.
like it would have to be one of the lower end teams if he's gonna get, you know, brought on.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Because again, the desirability of the job is in the toilet. You have no franchise quarterback sitting there at this point. Um, you don't know if Chris Olave is going to stay healthy or not because the concussion issues have gone all the way back to Ohio State at this point, and Derek Carr throws a hospital ball, so there's that as well. The offensive line is just untalented. Alvin Kamara sells his house in New Orleans. You're not sure if he's going to really be staying or what his plans are for the future. What if he wants to be there? What's going on with that situation? Not a whole lot of talent sitting around there. So I don't know who really wants this job. That's kind of the issue right now. Um, so yeah, I think an Aaron Glenn, but I also think one of those guys like a David Shaw could definitely get his hands inside of this. But also on top of that, no cap space. Like negative $50 million in cap space to start the year, lowest in the NFL. Only I think 3 teams, 4 teams are negative in cap space entering the offseason. The Saints, the Browns, the Seahawks, and the Dolphins are all in negative cap space sitting here currently today. Oregon into the offseason is what I mean by that. So yeah, not a desirable job at all. Moving into the New York Jets position as Drew put it, also not a desirable position. Dealing with the media of New York, what you're going to do with the quarterback situation there. But the roster's pretty damn talented, so at least you have that going for you. And you're not negative $50 million in cap space. You at least have $28 million to work with a little bit, and you don't have to all spend it on a quarterback. Kind of hand in hand. It's all right. Um, Interviews with Mike Vrabel, Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan. Jesus. They also have names out there like Arthur Smith, Joe Brady, Brian Flores, Josh McCown, Bobby Slowick, Aaron Glenn, Vance Joseph, Matt Nagy, Brian Greasy, and Darren Rizzi. So a lot of familiar names that they're interviewing at the very least. Is this the Bobby Slowick job? Is this where you think that this is, or do you have another name for this?
This is the Flores job.
Oh, this is the Flores job. Okay.
Yeah. Keep in mind, this man's got a lawsuit against the NFL.
Hmm.
And you don't I don't think you do that if you want to succeed at the highest levels. I believe that his lawsuit has merit. I believe everything that he says in his lawsuit, but when you come out against an ownership like that, I think he's a good coach. I think he's been a
Sure.
good coach this year.
Absolutely.
But I think if he wants a job, he's gonna have to scrape the bottom of the barrel.
Mm.
Um, Type job. And a lot of people might say, but Drew, what about the Raiders? That's bottom of the barrel. Well, listen about the Raiders. This is Las Vegas. This is Tom Brady has full power over this right now. This is clearing the front office. This is clearing, and Tom Brady's going to put the phone calls in. He's going to bring somebody in. He's going to bring in a well respected GM. He's going to bring in a well respected. This isn't Robert Sala as the head coach of the Raiders. Okay. This isn't Vance Joseph as the head coach of the Raiders. Okay, that's not what we're going to see here. We're going to see a tier 1 GM candidate and a tier 1 head coaching candidate for the Raiders. So
Yep.
if Flores wants a job, in my opinion, it is the Jets.
Yep. I think this is that, or I mentioned the Slowick job as well. I'm not sure what the if you compare last year to this year on how much the Slowick hype was. It's a lot lower this year. Obviously, the offensive line play terrible. CJ Stroud, bottom 3 quarterbacks in terms of getting sacked, or I guess top 3 in the league and getting sacked. All year, wide receivers getting hurt. Joe Mixon's in and out of the lineup here and there. So yeah, not a whole lot of great things from the players in terms of the injury side of it. But even without that, I don't think the Bobby Slowick hype is as high as it is last year. I think either Bobby Slowick stays or he takes one of these lower jobs like the New York job. I definitely see him kind of maybe reaching for, maybe having a pretty good chance for as well. But I definitely see the Brian Flores thing in the line of thinking is right there as well. The Las Vegas Raiders are our last team for the coaching carousel. And looking at the tracked head coaches that they're looking at right now. Reaching out to Bill Belichick, obviously, that's the big one and the kind of biggest one that we've seen here. Also reaching out to Liam Cohen, Pete Carroll, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. And they've also had official interview requests for Todd Monken, Steve Spagnuolo, and then again, Johnson, Glenn. Those are official interview requests. And they actually do have a interview with Ben Johnson on Friday, as sources show. So they basically have all the big names out there. Anyone that we've already mentioned at this point, they want to go get them.
I won't be surprised if this is Ben Johnson. I think that's a terrible idea.
I
I
agree.
won't be surprised. Todd Monken, I would not be surprised.
Mhm.
I know you're going to hate this. I'm going to
Okay.
say it. Cliff Kingsbury, I would not be surprised.
Oh, fuck.
Um, you know, we're 5 days away from and I know you said this is our last one, but hopefully me mentioning this name can dwell this in this area also, because it's something we should talk about before we come back on the podcast. We're 5 days away from the exclusive rights negotiation window for Mike McCarthy ending and him
Yeah.
being a free agent.
Right.
I would not be surprised if
Mm.
the Raiders, I mean, they're paying $40 million to four guys. They got to pay Gruden, they got to pay
Oh,
McDaniels, they
fuck.
got to pay Pierce, and they got to pay the new guy. So, and that's the brokest owner in sports. So,
The Steelers have had like 3 coaches throughout their entire history, while the Raiders are gonna be paying 4 on their payroll alone at one time. That's fucking hell.
what are the Cowboys doing right now with Mike McCarthy? Um, he's a free agent in 5 days.
Correct.
I'm going to tell you, my hopes and dreams are that they retain him because we kick his ass no matter where he's at. But if we don't retain him, I hope that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch offer John, is it Fassel or Fossil?
Fossil.
I
Yep.
hope they offer John Fossil the biggest special teams coordinator salary in the history of football, because he's the best special teams coordinator in the NFL.
It's very
I
true.
mean, you
Very
guys,
true.
Brian, your punter, Brandon Aubrey, Turpentine,
Yep.
they've all excelled under him. So we got to offer him all the money. So part of me wants you guys to get rid of McCarthy for that. But
Yeah.
what are the Cowboys doing here? Are they just going to wait for funsies 5 more days
This
before they announce this extension?
Yeah, this is a good question. You asked me this if you would have asked me this 3 weeks ago, I would have said, "Mike McCarthy's staying." That's all the signs are pointing towards Mike McCarthy staying. I don't think that's gonna be any different. That's what I would tell you 2 or 3 weeks ago. The interviews, the comments, the signs all make me walk all of that back. And I would say, I don't know. I could see Mike McCarthy gone now at this point. Um, because Jerry has always been a very front, like, Mike is staying. Mike is staying. No different. Mike is staying. Mike is staying. Mike is staying. It's radio silence pretty much at this point. I know the players like Micah Parsons have said they want Mike McCarthy back or whatnot, but it's not really a factor. It's not Max Crosby saying I want Antonio Pierce, and then he gets fired a year later, and you have another wasted season. Um, I can see him gone, but we can't do this so late, and now we don't request interviews. We don't try to interview anyone, and if we don't try to, then now we're looking at promoting guys within. Um,
Oh, you're not. I don't know if you're on the got your ear to the ground in the world, but you're not promoting someone from within, my man. The reason why there hasn't been an announcement is because your guys' next head coach has a college football game he's coaching tomorrow against Ohio State. Steve Sark, the head coach of Texas, best believe he is on Jerry Jones' short list, which should be fucking scary to you, because the other name I keep seeing all over the place is Jason Witten. So
Oh, fuck.
that's like going from Bill Belichick to Jeff Saturday,
Yep.
going from Sark to
Oh my
Witten. But
gosh.
you best believe that Sark is you know that that is on,
Yeah.
which I don't know if Sark wants to leave to go to the Cowboys and give up a year of Arch Manning next year, but maybe Texas wins. Texas wins the national championship this year, and Sark becomes the new head coach for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, we'll definitely say, hey man, I'll represent at all times. Um, but I will talk as much shit as I possibly can about the Dallas Cowboys at every opportunity, because I am just that pessimistic fan at every turn and chance. Let's go ahead and close out the coaching carousel. If any more news or updates happen, you'll hear from us next week and our thoughts about uh, all the situations. Again, 5 days away from the Mike McCarthy stuff, and by the time we get back on, we'll see what the Dallas Cowboys are doing. But yeah, let's go ahead and move off of this and let's move into fixing our first franchise of the offseason, starting off with the team that has the number one pick in the draft, and that's going to be the Tennessee Titans. Um, we already had our power rankings, Drew and I did, and we both said, well, I said that the Tennessee Titans, I don't think they're bottom of the barrel quite. Drew had them bottom of the barrel. I think New York's that's as low as you can really go at this point. But Tennessee, you're not in much better contention. You could take 30, 31, 32, and you can kind of flip flop them all over the place. Um, Fixing this franchise, you already mentioned it in the coaching section. Um, they have a good head coach. We're not touching any of the coaching staff stuff, correct, Drew? We don't have to. I think it's going to be
We're good there.
It's funny talking about the bottom of the barrel team, and not touching their coach at all, but we believe in the coach. We think he's a good coach. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the needs, free agency, move into the draft? Is that how you want to kind of go about this?
Yeah, I would like to know if Jacob Taylor is the um, general manager of the Titans. Do you consider trading this pick?
No.
Okay, so picking up fifth or sixth, number 5 or number 6, and an early second round pick. You love Shador, Cam Ward more than you love Abdul Carter and Quinn Ewers or James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Moreau. Like you're taking the quarterback here.
It's not about what I think in terms of who I love because Abdul
It's
Carter
just about what's going to happen.
Abdul Carter is ranked ahead of Shador. James Pierce is ranked ahead of Shador. Shador is still inside my top 10. I don't know if Shador is the pick here. I don't know. I feel like at this point it's a toss up between Shador and Cam. Uh, man, I don't. You can't guarantee you're gonna be in this position again. That's the only problem. And then if you are a little bit better next year, let's say you move away from this, right? You don't start Will Levis next year. You start Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, Mason Rudolph, whatever the fuck, and you win enough games to get yourself not inside the top 5 picks. Now what are you staring at? You're staring at a pretty good roster. And now we're looking at the Tennessee Titans next year and the year after and going, this roster's so good. But the contracts are about to run out and they don't have a quarterback yet. I think this is a point where you have to swing at a quarterback because you're in the position to take who you want. And with a head coach he worked with Joe Burrow, he knows what good quarterbacks look like. Um, with a with a head coach like that, you got to trust him in making the decisions on the pick he wants at quarterback position. And obviously, those two guys, it's going to come down to Cam and it's going to come down to Shador. But I think at the end of the day, to answer your question, you stay put because you don't know if you're going to ever pick in this spot again within the next couple of years.
So we're not doing a mock draft here. So first pick's over. They've taken a quarterback, Shador Sanders, Cam Ward.
Yep.
The next thing I want the Titans to do is I want them to go look at Ronnie Stanley or I want them to go look at Cam Robinson. I want them to sign, preferably in my opinion, Cam Robinson. You put him in at left tackle. JC Latham, you're back to right tackle where you spent your whole career at Alabama. I think you've
Yeah.
now solidified your offensive line. You bring in a veteran at left. JC Latham goes back to right. You can get your, Peter, not a tackle, Skoronsky. You can get other talent later in the draft at the center guards situations.
Yeah.
And then what I really think you need to look into doing is Calvin Ridley's Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley gave you 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns this year. He had 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. He's 1,000 yards. He's 1,000 yard wide receiver. Um, Westbrook Kenny had a hell of a year this year. He's a free agent.
Yes.
Do you bring him back or
No.
do you go get T Higgins?
I think
You know what I'm
you
saying?
I think you let him walk. I don't know if you I don't think Tennessee has $50 million in cap space. So here, let's do it like this, Drew. This is our first time doing it. Let's go through the roster. Okay. And let's go one by one. So at the quarterback position, starter this year is Will Levis. We're looking at the draft for that, obviously. Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, we're not going to have the argument quite yet. If you want an argument about Cam Ward versus Shador Sanders or what's going to happen, or what we think is going to happen, or positional rankings, hit subscribe. We're going to have all those arguments at a later point. Point is, right now, it's one of those two guys. The one of those two guys is starting at quarterback next year, correct?
Yep.
Tony Pollard is going to continue to stay in Tennessee. He had a good year behind an offensive line that didn't really block for him that well. His yards after contact was fantastic. He's staying at the running back position, correct?
Yeah, with a solid backup.
Yep. Calvin Ridley stays. Nick Westbrook Akine, he's a free agent. We already talked about him. I would let him walk. I think that with the touchdowns that he produced, I think he's going to ask for more money than he's worth. That you can go get the same. I don't. When I say same type of production, I'm not talking about this year. I'm talking about a next year thing. You can go sign a Josh Palmer or a Noah Brown for the same type of production that you can get out of Nick Westbrook Akine that he's going to produce next year. I don't think he's going to give you a crazy amount. The other wide receiver on the board is Tyler Boyd. He's also going to be a free agent. I think you let him walk as well. Do you think you let that guy walk as well, right?
I'm honestly I don't really care about Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
I don't really care about 3, 4, 5. I'm of the mindset that if the Titans want to be good next year, Calvin Ridley is not the number one. That's my opinion. I think that you have to bring somebody or you have to bring in a number two that's right there. And I'm not talking Chris Godwin. Like I'm talking is Amari Cooper healthy? I'll consider it. You have to go after T. Higgins, a Stephon Diggs,
Yeah.
not DeAndre Hopkins, obviously. I just think
So you pretty much have your eyes set on T. Higgins. Um, Calvin Ridley can't be the one. T. Higgins is who you're kind of running after.
I just want you to look at what the quarterbacks that were successful this year had in front of them, the weapons that Jaden had, the weapons that Bo Nix really didn't have a ton of weapons. His mid-tier wide receivers were really good this year.
Yeah.
Um, what the Chicago Bears tried to set Caleb Williams up with, and I don't. Calvin Ridley, you need to upgrade the number 2 spot, and if you can upgrade your number 2 wide receiver spot with Calvin Ridley, that's a freaking win to me.
Yeah.
If
Sure.
you're going to upgrade him with your number 2 spot with I don't want to. I'm not a believer in upgrading it with a rookie because by the time you
No.
come back around in the draft
I think
at pick number 35, I just don't know
I
if
think
that
you're
number 2 standout guy is there.
I think in the draft at that second round pick, you're looking at edge rusher and tackle. And the names that are floating around that spot right there, Mike Green, who is getting more and more hype as the time goes on, who might sneak into the first round, Cameron Williams, and Josh Connerly all have again, edge rusher and tackle spot, I think are the positions that you look at in the second round. Those are the positions that are floating around in those areas. Um, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that one. Uh, the tight end spot, Chiga Conquo, keep him.
I like him.
Yeah.
I think he's a good player.
So offensive line, JC Latham, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry is going to be the starter. He's on IR. He was a free agent signing, got hurt. He's a really good center, so he's going to be starting there at the center position. And then you have the right guard and right tackle position. So we move Latham over to the right tackle spot, his natural position. And we're hoping for, so we have a guard position open, you have a tackle position open. What were the names you said at the tackle position in free agency? Because I have a guard position that I have for a free agency.
Ronnie Stanley or Cam Robinson.
Okay.
Um, Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs guard is a free agent. I'm not a big believer in paying top of the line money at the guard position. I don't think you can mention your free agents in a second, but if you bring in a Cam Robinson at left tackle, and
Yeah.
then you move JC Latham, who was okay this year, to right tackle, I think he'll be much better at right tackle.
Yes.
Peter does his thing. You bring back your center that's on IR. At that last guard spot, you re-sign like Dylan Radins, who played guard for you this year. He played league average guard.
Yep.
But
He
when you
did.
bring in a pro bowler at center, and then you bring in a really good player at left tackle, and you move JC Latham, it's okay to have a league average player at left guard.
Yep.
It's okay, especially with a Cam Robinson right there.
Yep.
So fill in at free agency, that's fine as long as you're not paying top of the line money to a guard, you know. Obviously, the Rams are in the playoffs, so I can't talk too much crap about what they did. But you know, at
I totally
$50 million
I
in cap space, I just think you spend it elsewhere.
Sure. No, I think I understand what you're saying. I think a guy that you could get depending on what type of money he wants, but he's been well above league average on the year. And a guy who's rejuvenated his career in 1 year in Philly, Mekhi Becton, played guard for them, and he was fantastic. He was great all year for the Eagles. So if you want to bring in a guy like that, depending on the type of money that he wants, I think that fills the spot immediately. Um, and again, he's been great. He was awesome all year. So he was above the league average on PFF grades. So shout out to Mackay for actually being healthy and being and playing all year, man. So he played 903 snaps on the year. Um, so good on him. I think that kind of fixes the offensive line situation, and you still have the offensive line coach. I forget his name. It's actually the head coach's dad. He's one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. But he can make do with that combination, and I think we fixed the offensive line immediately. And now we're looking at a Tennessee Titans team that looks pretty hopeful. Looking at the defensive side of the ball now, um, how they have it set up, they play a 3-4 at their defensive end spots. They have Sebastian Joseph Day, who is a free agent. You have Jeffrey Simmons, and then you have big motherfucking Tavondre Sweat at nose tackle. Um, obviously, Sweat stays. He's gonna be a starter. Jeffrey Simmons stays. Fantastic player. Sebastian Joseph Day has actually been great all year, depending on the money he wants. I think you re-sign him. I think he's been awesome. If you if you don't want to pay him, I think other edge spots you can look at is Azeez Ojulari and Dante Fowler. But I think you could get similar type of production out of any one of those guys. Sebastian Joseph Day, Fowler, Olari. I think Ojulari. I think any of those guys could play the edge spot for them pretty efficiently, and I think they can all make around the similar type price tag. But I think I'm a big fan of bringing back Sebastian Joseph Day at this point.
Yeah, I like bringing back Joseph Day. I think that's a good idea. If you don't bring him back, then you're playing in the maybe the Josh Sweat market.
Yeah.
Um, I think that Harold Landry is a huge cut candidate for them. I know he's a stalwart down there. I think Kenneth Murray is a huge cut candidate for them. He
Yep.
led the team in
Agreed.
tackles this year, but he was absolutely awful in space.
Hmm.
He's not a good in space defender. So that's like $27 million that you can free up just right there. And
Yep.
you know, that puts you in the position to go get um, I don't know what the demand for Khalil Mack is going to be this offseason. You could bring in a player like him.
Yeah.
Um, there's a certain linebacker that's coming off a torn Achilles that plays for San Francisco that I think is going to be in very high demand this
Yep.
offseason, who, in my opinion, can definitely play middle linebacker and edge. He could play all over the place. So
I'm with you.
there's a lot of opportunity, um, for them to upgrade this defense. You obviously already have a really good corner. They got a safety.
Jerome Baker's a free agent. You will let him walk or you resign him?
Do you have like salary predictions in front of you?
Um, I don't have salary predictions. Let's see if I have this. Let's see if there's a no, I don't have a doesn't look like I have a prediction thing right here in front of me. For me, when it comes to Jerome, I don't know if I would bring him back looking at how he played this year, playing like a little bit below average. Um, I think go get similar type production from a different type of a player. I actually don't have Tyrell Dotson is the only linebacker that I have listed up who ended up playing for two different teams this past year, but ended up playing fantastic. So yeah, I think Dotson is a prime candidate playing for Miami and then played for Buffalo too this year as well. But
And I just think maybe you bring in another corner
yeah,
and you really tighten up.
yeah.
Uh,
I
you
think you
know
bring
who
real quick. I,
who
I think you bring back Diggs too. I think you bring back Quandre Diggs. I know he's on
to
IR,
to me
but I think you
to
bring
to
him back
me the safety position is so
replaceable.
like somebody's going to spend a lot of money on Buda Baker this offseason. Somebody's going to spend a lot of money on Talanoga Hufunga this offseason. And I just the 49ers,
Real
obviously they
quick,
weren't really good this year, but they started two safeties,
real
two
quick.
rookie safeties,
Before
you know.
everyone yells at you, Buddha was actually re-signed by Arizona earlier in the year.
Oh, that's right. I'm thinking because he was on the trade block all off season,
Yep,
all
yep.
season.
And we pretty much
You're
talked
right.
about
You're
him.
right. You're right.
Yeah, he was re-signed on December 18th, 3 year,
You're
$54
right.
million, which yeah, 3 year, $54 million. So
Let me rephrase. Somebody's going to give up capital to trade for Buda Baker in the offseason.
yeah, uh, yeah. I mean, the safeties this offseason. Justin Simmons, Justin Reed, Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus Epps, Jeremy Chin, who had a pretty good year for Washington. Um, I think it's just safeties are so scheme dependent that you kind of you could pick someone who is going to make less money but going to fit your scheme a lot better and you're going to get a lot more production out of them than a team that really needs that guy but doesn't have the right scheme fit for him. So, I mean, shit, Javon Holland's a free agent. I mean, I just yeah. I'm still a fan of Quandre staying, but I get the line of thinking for the safety position. I'm definitely there with you. It's funny that we talk about replaceability and whatnot when this year Malachi Starks is like a top 10 player on every single person's fucking big board, it seems like. Um, but yeah, so I'm there. Um, but that kind of
And
covers
just to throw this out there, every team that we talk about this offseason that needs cornerback help, I'm going to mention Jordan Lewis, just so you know. So just prepare for yourself for that. I really love him as a player. So I think every team
unfortunately.
could use him.
Yeah. Obviously I hope that Jordan stays because he's fucking awesome, man. He's so good. But yeah, um, we already kind of mentioned our draft stuff as well. Sanders reward in the first round, and then in the second because they don't have a third round pick. I think you're looking at Mike Green, Cameron Williams. If Cameron Williams actually does declare for the draft, because there's questions on he might actually play, he might stay, play left tackle, and then he might get drafted even higher than that because Cameron Williams is a very toolsy guy, very raw prospect, and then Josh Connerly as well. Offensive tackle talent essentially is what we're looking there at that position potentially. Um, but yeah, we're not going into the third round. I would usually going forward if they have a third round pick, I'll mention third round talent. So yeah, I think that kind of leaves us, with the Tennessee Titans, a lot of hopeful areas. You want L'Jarius Sneed healthy, right? That's the key there. You want to bring back your defensive line. Essentially, you kind of fill your linebacker holes with a couple of players in free agency as well. But I think that offensive line with the changes that we made, moving Latham over, bringing in some free agents, maybe even in the draft too, and then the couple of wide receivers that we mentioned as well. I think the Tennessee Titans are looking at a much better team And it all just kind of comes down to the quarterback play at that point, which 50-50 shot on either one of those guys, in my opinion. I think Shador is a much better player than Cam, but obviously Cam has all the hype because of the toolsiness and the athletics and the raw. And yeah, I'm there with people. I get it, but I think Sanders is the better player. Anything else with the Tennessee Titans? All right. So next we are going to be moving into it's the Cleveland Browns next week, right? That's what we want to cover next week. So Cleveland Brown fans, look out for that one. We'll be covering them next. Last thing that we have for today is our wild card predictions. This is the time of the year that everyone waits for. It's what everyone guns for. It's the playoffs. And starting with the AFC side, we have the 4th seed Texans going against the 5th seed Chargers. Drew, you and I sitting in the exact same place. Chargers win this one, correct?
DJ Stroud is 0-5 in his professional and college career against a Harbaugh.
Oh, fuck, man. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think that this is just kind of disappointing just because, how big I was on the Texans and CJ Stroud and everyone coming into the year. And now we're talking about them losing in the first round to the Chargers, who are a good team. One of the best defenses in the league. Justin Herbert looks fantastic. Ladd is great. Quentin Johnston, we talked about earlier in the podcast. So yeah, it's I think the Chargers are going to go ahead and take this away from the Texans pretty comfortably. Um, Ravens at the 3rd seed.
You got a score prediction?
Oh, well, actual score prediction? Yeah, let's go 13-24.
Yeah, I got like 20-13. Low
Yeah.
low scoring game.
Yep.
Chargers defense holds out.
Yep. Ravens at the 3rd seed going against the interdivision rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the 6th seed. If you would have asked me about this
Right.
matchup a couple of weeks ago, I would have said this is going to be a fucking awesome game. This is going to be super competitive.
It still will be. It still will be. It's a division
It's a
game.
division game
My man.
still. Absolutely.
It's still gonna be funky. The Ravens are 10-point favorites, and I would be taking the Steelers to cover that.
Ravens coming out on top, though, for both of us, correct?
Oh, definitely. The Ravens are winning, but I don't know if they win by more than 10. I
With
saw a prediction today that Ravens 31, Steelers 13, and I was just like,
Oh, yeah.
y'all,
No.
division games in the playoffs, teams don't get shellacked like that. It's not happening.
No. What's your score prediction for this one?
27. Shit, I said they would cover. I don't know if they can get more than 17. Damn, maybe they will. I would say 27-17.
27-17. Okay. I was
Yeah.
thinking more 20-14 was. I think it's another
You
low
know what?
scoring one just because of the defense.
I'm gonna go 23-14 because Zay Flowers is not playing.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah. I like that. Buffalo Bills going against the Denver Broncos. Hey, shout out to the Broncos for making the playoffs. Shout out to Bo Nix, rookie season, making the playoffs. But I think this is going to be a very comfortable Buffalo Bills victory. What's the favorites on it? Do you know what the favorites are off the top of your head?
Yeah, the Bills are 9-point favorites over Denver right now.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I would expect the Bills to cover that.
Yeah, I'm definitely okay with that. I'm okay with a 31 to 17 victory for the Bills. I'm pretty comfortable with that.
Let me check one thing just because I am curious. It's going to be 21 degrees with 15-mile-an-hour winds, some flurries of snow. So I would not expect, Mr. Bo Nix, who I love and admire and was, a great college football player. I would not expect him to, take his skill set into the flurries of Buffalo and succeed there. So
I'm absolutely, right there with you. I don't see any shot, man. Um,
sometimes it just comes down to experience and it just is what it is.
yep. No, absolutely. And that's gonna cover our AFC side. Um, so looking at it from this way, this would be the Chargers playing against Kansas City, correct? And then the Ravens playing the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, that's good. I
Give
like
me
that.
that.
Yeah, that's fun. I love that. First of all, you get
I
the division
because you get the
matchup,
division.
and
Yeah,
then
you
you
get the
get
division.
you get Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, the MVP race. Oh, I fucking love that. That's movie shit. I like that.
And don't get me wrong, I'm taking the Kansas City Chiefs over the Chargers in that game, but that's not an easy
No,
dub for the that's not an easy dub at all for the
I
Chiefs.
think
So
that's another low scoring game, but we'll get to that when we get to the divisional, obviously. Let's go to move on to the NFC side, and let's go and start with the fourth seed and the fifth seed. Once again, we have the LA Rams going against the Minnesota Vikings. Game, if because of all the fires happening in LA, might end up being moved to Arizona actually instead. No word on that officially, but I'm sure we'll hear word on it very, very, very soon. Drew has a look on his face. Are you going with the fourth seed?
yeah, I'm taking
Wow.
the Rams.
I'm not. I'm not doing it. I'm definitely going with the Minnesota Vikings. Um, listen, man, the defense is really good. I know that the Rams are the team that a lot of people don't want to face right now. The firepower is high. Um, I don't think so. I don't see it happening. Detroit may have been able to
Coming
put
up,
31 points on that team, but that's Detroit. That's a different playing a different ball game at that point.
we are playing a different ball game, but if you wanna know the belief that Minnesota has in their own building right now, do you know who they elevated to the roster today and are gonna make the number 2 quarterback for the game?
Who?
Daniel
Daniel
Jones.
Jones. Yeah, let's go. Oh, fuck. I'm still going
Interesting
Minnesota.
timing coming off of Sam Darnold's worst, um it's in a dome. Minnesota has an amazing, amazing stadium. They have an amazing defense. It's loud as hell in there.
Yep.
But Sean McVay is a hell of a coach,
Yep.
and Puka Nakua and Cooper Cup and
Kyron
Kyron
Williams.
and
Yeah.
not Blake Corum because he fractured his forearm,
Yep.
but two of the best rookie defenders we've seen in tandem in a long time. I think
Yep.
it's going to be a hell of a game, and I'm very excited.
Yeah. I'm with you on this one. Instant classic 23-24.
I love it.
Yep.
The Vikings are currently 1-point favorites.
Yeah, there we go. Um, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 3rd seed. Washington Commanders, 6th seed.
Tampa Bay currently 3-point favorites.
Um,
Um, Tampa Bay's winning the game, in my opinion.
okay. And what does this come down to for you? Like what is it that makes you
I
pick Tampa over Washington at this point? Even though Washington's been a better team.
Tampa Bay takes this game into a shootout. Baker Mayfield is super comfortable with a fuck it game. I think Jaden Daniels is super comfortable in a shootout also, but he's a rookie. He's never been here before, and I would expect that he has some struggles.
What's the score?
I will be thrilled. I will be thrilled if Jaden wins. Absolutely thrilled.
Yeah.
I want him to win, but I'm not picking with my heart here. Um, I'm gonna go 27-24 Bucks.
Okay, I was going 27-20 Washington, Jaden Daniels, game ending down the line, Washington winning.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. Inject it right here into my veins.
Right?
Give it to me.
Oh man. All right. Philly versus Green Bay, 2nd seed Philly, 7th seed Green Bay. Um, where are we going?
Philly.
Yeah,
I think Philly. I think Philly's. Assuming. Go ahead. Let me search up Jalen Hurts real quick.
I think that this all kind of comes down to Jalen Hurts and the availability. Has he practiced all week?
Can we get any? He was on practice today.
He was at practice today.
Yep.
Okay. Um, it's Philly. If Jalen's at practice, if Jalen's okay, it's Philly. If Jalen's not at practice, Jalen's not okay, it's comfortably Green Bay. I still think that with Green Bay, how good they are, how good they've been, I think this is another close game. I think all of the NFC games are gonna be fucking fantastic. I think they're gonna be awesome. I think that this is a rematch from week 1 too. First game of the season, by the way. All the way back in Brazil, but we're playing it in Philly this time. I don't know how much better that is. Same area, I guess. Um, let's go.
I do want to say two things just based off of stuff that I'm seeing on social media right now. Do you know how many interceptions Jalen Hurts had this year? He had
Yeah,
five.
I was gonna say I thought it was 6. Yeah. Okay.
Two of them came in week one against this Packers defense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But also the other lingering thing that Jalen Hurts has been dealing with all season is this finger injury that he's had.
Right.
And I'm watching clips of him in practice today, and he's warming up and throwing passes, and the wide receivers throwing the passes back to him, and he's catching them. He doesn't have a spotter next to him catching the ball. So you're not sitting there catching the throwback passes if your finger is any type of concern right now. So
Okay. Let's go.
um, they are 4-point favorites,
Green Bay covers.
27, 27, 24. Yeah, they
31,
come.
31-28. Yeah. That's yep.
I love that. I hope so. I want to see a shootout. We
Yep.
deserve a shootout.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. And then that's gonna put us. We're at odds with 2 of them, so we're either getting Minnesota or LA versus Detroit, and then we're getting Washington or Tampa against Philly, which I'm sure Philly would enjoy to go against Tampa once again to try to get that redemption from last year. So, and I know that Green Bay wants to go against anyone to try to make it past the divisional, try to get themselves a little bit further. I know Jordan Love wants to prove himself a little bit more. Yeah, man. So it's going to be great. I think the wild card situation has been set up fantastically. If things go great on the AFC side, like we think it is, and fuck, man, the divisional is going to be a lot of fun to watch. It's gonna be really exciting. It's gonna be a lot of fun because even with the divisional with LA or Minnesota, I think you have the divisional matchup and Detroit versus Minnesota, or you have a fucking big ass shootout with LA and Detroit, like like you've already had. So I think it's gonna be awesome. All right, so that is it for us. Another 2-hour podcast in the books, man. It's an exciting time of the year. It's gonna be really exciting. Games start on Saturday, move all the way into Monday. Um, hopefully we can get
Games start tonight, baby. We got the college football playoff
there you go.
tonight. So we got football Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Listen, y'all, pour yourself a drink, put your feet up, order some chicken wings, and let's go. It's football time.
Absolutely. Before we head off and, get excited for these games, Drew, sign off with anything?
Yeah, two things. 49ers just completed an interview with Robert Saleh for their defensive coordinator. And I would like to I'd be remiss of me not to ask our friends and loved ones and our subscribers to tune in as the Kings go for their sixth
All right,
win in
bro.
a row tomorrow and light the game
Okay.
against those whack ass Boston Celtics.
Well,
So,
we all have tomfoolery on the podcast every once in a while, and Drew gets to have his fun every once in a while too. So, if you stuck around to
oh,
the
bro,
end,
I got something for you next week if they win, though,
all
brother.
right.
I got something for you.
If you stuck around to the end, we do appreciate you. Make sure to subscribe to us on all social media platforms, TikTok, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and that's going to be the 2020 podcast, all one word. We do appreciate you guys sticking around. It means a lot to us. Make sure to go check us out on all those other platforms. If you're interested in the NBA content, hopefully we get back to that next week. We usually do that on Fridays. Had a bunch of, we're trying to record on a normal schedule once again, but it's so weird. It's so hard to, record on a normal schedule when you're unemployed, right, Drew?
I'm retired. I'm not unemployed.
Well, I'm on workers' comp. I'm not unemployed, technically. All right, you guys. We do appreciate it. Make sure you to stay tuned for next week. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button. Besides that, see you guys later.
Peace.